The first time my mother told me I needed to give my sister my house, she said it like she was asking me to pass the salt. "You're not using all of it anyway." I remember standing at my kitchen counter with a grocery bag still in my hand, staring at her through the phone. "My house? Don't make this difficult, Claire. Your sister needs somewhere stable. You have a good job, no children, and you're barely home. It makes sense." There it was. That familiar family logic. My sister's needs were always practical. Mine were always optional. I was 43 years old, and somehow I was still being measured by what I could give the family. The house she wanted me to surrender wasn't a mansion. It was a 3-bedroom brick house outside Columbus, Ohio, with an old maple tree in the front yard and a kitchen I had spent 4 years slowly repairing. I had bought it myself after saving for nearly a decade. My sister Melissa was 38. She had 2 children, a husband who had recently left, and a talent for turning every emergency into something the rest of us were supposed to solve. My parents had always helped her. When Melissa needed a car, Dad co-signed. When she couldn't make rent, Mom quietly transferred money. When she changed careers 3 times, everyone called it finding herself. When I worked 60-hour weeks and paid my own bills, Mom called me the strong one. Being the strong one sounds like a compliment until you realize it means nobody checks, whether you're tired. "I can't give Melissa my house," I said. Mom sighed. "You always were selfish about property." I almost laughed. Property. That was what she called the place where I had spent years building a life. "I didn't say no because I don't love Melissa," I told her. "I said no because it's mine." She went quiet. Then she said something that stayed with me. "Your sister is family. You can replace a house." I looked around my kitchen. The cabinets I had painted myself. The small framed photograph of my grandmother. The coffee mug with the chipped handle I refused to throw away. I realized my mother wasn't asking me to sacrifice a building. She was asking me to prove one more time that my life mattered less. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I simply said no. What happened next was the quietest decision I had ever made. And it changed my entire family. For the next week, nobody mentioned the house. That should have made me feel relieved. Instead, it made me suspicious. My mother had never been good at accepting the word no. Usually, she followed it with 3 phone calls, 2 relatives, and a story about how badly someone had been hurt. This time, there was silence. Then Melissa called. She didn't sound angry. She sounded tired. "I heard Mom talk to you." "She did." "You're really not going to help me?" "I am helping you. I'm willing to help you find a place you can afford. I'm not giving you my house." She breathed out slowly. "You know what?" "Fine. I figured you'd say that." Something about her answer bothered me. "Melissa, what did Mom tell you?" "Nothing." "You're sure?" "Claire, I don't want another fight." Neither did I. So I let it go. 2 days later, my father called. He didn't ask about the house. He asked whether I still had the original mortgage papers. I sat down. "Why?" "Just wondering." "Dad, why would you need them?" A long pause followed. "Your mother is handling some family paperwork." That was when the old feeling returned. The one I'd had as a child whenever adults lowered their voices in the next room. Something was happening around me. But this time I wasn't 12 years old. I had learned that when people say, "It's nothing," you should sometimes listen to what they're not saying. I opened the file cabinet in my home office. My mortgage documents were there. So was the deed. So were the property tax records. I didn't know exactly why Dad had asked, but I made copies of everything. Then I photographed each page with my phone and stored the pictures in a private folder. It wasn't revenge. It was habit. Years earlier, I had learned to keep records because my family had a strange way of, remembering agreements differently once money became involved. That evening, Mom called again. We need to talk about Melissa. We already did. No, we need to talk seriously. I've already given you my answer. You don't understand what's at stake. I leaned back in my chair. Then tell me. She didn't. Instead, she said, just don't make any decisions about the house for a little while. My stomach tightened. Why? Because we're family. That answer wasn't an answer. And for the first time, I wondered whether the house was actually the beginning of the story. Not the end. The following Saturday, my parents invited me to dinner. Both of them. That alone told me this wasn't going to be casual. My mother cooked lasagna, Dad opened a bottle of wine, and for 20 minutes we discussed weather, work, and my neighbor's new fence. Then Dad put his fork down. Your mother and I have been thinking about the future. I almost smiled. Whenever my parents said the future, someone else's present was about to become inconvenient. What about it? Mom folded her napkin. Melissa needs stability. I know. She can't keep moving every year. I agree. She needs a home where the children can grow up. I looked at both of them. You've already asked me this. This is different, Dad said. How? He looked at Mom. She answered for him. We think you should move. I stared at her. Move where? Anywhere. You want me to move out of my own house so Melissa can move in? Nobody answered. That silence was confirmation. Dad finally said, you could sell it. There would be enough for you to buy something smaller. I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want me to sell my house because my sister can't afford one? It's not like you're using all the bedrooms. That doesn't make it yours. Mom's expression hardened. Why do you always turn everything into ownership? I looked at her. Because it is ownership. She pushed her plate away. Your father and I gave you everything. I knew that sentence. It had appeared in different forms throughout my entire life. We fed you. We raised you. We helped you. We were there for you. What they never mentioned was that after I turned 18, I paid my own college tuition through scholarships and part-time work. I bought my first car myself. I moved out without asking for money. I built my career without family connections. But Melissa had always received help before she had to ask twice. I didn't bring any of that up. I simply said, I'm not selling my house. Dad's face changed. Claire, sometimes family requires sacrifice. Then sacrifice something that belongs to you. The room went silent. My mother stared at me as if I had slapped her. Then she said very quietly, You have no idea what we've already done for you. I knew she meant it as a warning. I just didn't understand what she was warning me about. Not yet. 3 days later, I found out. I was at work when an email arrived from my mortgage company. At first, I assumed it was routine. Then I saw the subject line. Request for documentation regarding property ownership. I opened it. The message said they had received an inquiry concerning a potential transfer of interest in my property. I read it twice. Then a third time. A transfer of interest. I hadn't requested one. I called immediately. The woman on the phone was careful with her words. She couldn't discuss every detail without verification, but she confirmed that paperwork had recently been submitted concerning my house. Who submitted it? I can't give you that information. Was it submitted by me? There was a pause. No. My hands went cold. I asked her to place a note on the account that I disputed any unauthorized transfer. She told me to visit the county recorder's office and obtain a current copy of the deed and any recently filed documents. I left work early. At the recorder's office, I stood in line behind people, dealing with ordinary property matters while my mind ran through every conversation I'd had with my parents. When my turn came, I gave the clerk my address. She pulled up the record. There it was. A recently filed document claiming that I had agreed to transfer a portion of my property to another family member. Melissa. My sister's name was on it. My signature was underneath. Except I hadn't signed it. I knew my own handwriting. The signature looked close. Close enough that someone who didn't know me might accept it. But there was one problem. The date printed on the document was a Tuesday in May. On that Tuesday, I had been in Pittsburgh for a work conference. I had hotel records, a parking receipt, emails, a presentation with my name and timestamp, and most importantly, I had never been anywhere near a notary that day. I sat in my car afterward and stared at the steering wheel. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry yet. I was trying to understand how my family had moved from pressuring me to give Melissa my house to filing paperwork that made it look as though I had agreed. Then my phone rang. It was Mom. I answered. She didn't say hello. You went to the recorder's office. My heart stopped. How do you know? Your father heard from someone. I said nothing. Then Mom whispered, "Please don't make this worse." I closed my eyes. That was the moment I understood. They knew, and whatever they had done, they were afraid I would find it. I didn't accuse anyone that night. That surprised even me. The younger version of Claire would have called my mother immediately and demanded an explanation. The woman I had become did something different. I started documenting. I saved the email from the mortgage company. I downloaded the property record. I requested certified copies of the filing. I contacted an attorney who specialized in real estate disputes and brought every document with me. Her name was Elena Brooks. She was calm, direct, and completely unimpressed by family excuses. She studied the paperwork for several minutes. "Did you sign this?" "No." "Did you authorize anyone to sign for you?" "No." "Did you give anyone power of attorney?" "No." She nodded. "Then don't contact your family about the legal side of this yet." I looked at her. "Why?" "Because right now you have a problem. You don't need to turn that problem into an argument before you know exactly what happened." That sentence changed the way I looked at everything. For years, my family had trained me to defend my feelings. Elena taught me to defend facts. We requested the filing history. We checked the notary information. We compared the signature against older documents. And then we found something unexpected. The document hadn't been filed directly by Melissa. It had been submitted through a small property services company. The company was owned by a woman named Denise Carter. Denise was my mother's longtime friend. I remembered her. She had attended my parents' anniversary party. She had babysat Melissa when we were teenagers. She had once told me I was too independent for my own good. Elena looked at me. "Do you know this person?" "Yes." "Then don't call her either." I nodded. The next step was to request the notary's record. That record showed something even more disturbing. The document claimed I had appeared in person and provided identification. I hadn't, but the notary's journal contained another detail. The person who presented the paperwork had listed a relationship to me. Sister. Melissa. I stared at that single word for a long time. I wanted to believe there was some innocent explanation. Maybe Melissa had been pressured. Maybe Mom had told her it was legal. Maybe someone had misunderstood something. But then Elena said something quietly. "Claire, people don't accidentally file property documents with somebody else's signature." That was the first moment I allowed myself to feel angry. Not because my family wanted my house, because they had decided that my consent was something they could manufacture. And I knew I wasn't going to give them another opportunity. I went home that evening and did something I hadn't done in years. I opened the box where I kept old family photographs. There were pictures of birthdays, holidays, graduations, and vacations. In almost every picture, Melissa was in the center. I wasn't bitter about that. At least, I didn't think I was. But I remembered how often I had stepped aside. When Melissa needed help, I stayed late. When Mom needed someone to drive her to appointments, I rearranged my schedule. When Dad needed paperwork handled, I handled it. I had spent years believing that being useful was the same thing as being loved. Maybe that's why my family thought they could keep asking. Because I had taught them that I would eventually give in. This time I didn't. I changed the locks on my house. I moved important documents to a secure location. I made sure my bank accounts and personal records were protected. And I told my employer that nobody was authorized to request information about me on my behalf. None of those things felt dramatic. They felt ordinary. That was the strange part. Quiet decisions were becoming my strongest form of protection. 2 days later, Melissa came to my house. She stood on the porch holding a cardboard box. I brought some of your old things. I didn't open the door all the way. What things? Mom said I could start moving some stuff over. My stomach dropped. You're not moving into my house. She looked genuinely confused. Claire, Mom said everything was settled. What did she tell you? Melissa hesitated. She said you'd agreed. I didn't. Her face changed. You didn't? No. She looked down at the box. Then she whispered, I thought you finally understood. Understood what? That I needed help. I understand that. I just don't agree that helping you means losing my home. Melissa started crying. For a moment, I felt the old instinct to comfort her. Then I remembered the document. The false signature. The notary record. The property filing. I stayed where I was. Melissa, did you sign anything? She wiped her face. I signed something Mom gave me. What? I don't know. It was supposed to make the house transfer easier. My heart sank. Did you read it? She shook her head. That was when I realized something important. Melissa might have been part of what happened. But she might not understand how far it had gone. And if that was true, the person I needed answers from wasn't standing on my porch. It was my mother. I didn't confront Mom immediately. Instead, I waited. The next morning, Elena called. We found something. My pulse quickened. The property services company had submitted several documents during the previous month. Not just mine. There were documents connected to Melissa's custody arrangements, a loan application, and another property. Elena had noticed a pattern. My mother had been trying to consolidate Melissa's finances because Melissa was facing serious debt. The house wasn't simply about giving Melissa somewhere to live. My property had been presented as an asset that would make Melissa appear financially stable. That changed everything. My mother wasn't only trying to give away my home. She had been using my property as though I had already agreed to help secure Melissa's future. And then we found the most important document, a letter from my mother to the property services company. It didn't say she owned my house. It said that I had verbally committed to transferring it to Melissa and that the paperwork was simply formalizing an arrangement. I read that sentence several times. Verbally committed. There had never been such a conversation. Elena looked at me. This is useful. Useful? It establishes what they believed they were doing. I nodded slowly. Then I asked the question that had been bothering me. Why would my mother believe she could do this? Elena didn't answer immediately. Finally, she said, because she probably expected you to back down. That hurt more than the forged signature. She was right. My family hadn't planned for me to fight. They had planned for me to feel guilty. They expected me to hear that Melissa needed help, remember every sacrifice my parents claimed to have made for me, and surrender. The legal paperwork was almost an afterthought. The real strategy had always been emotional. That afternoon, I called Mom. She answered immediately, You've been talking to a lawyer. Yes. Silence. Then she said, You really went this far? I didn't go anywhere. You filed a document using my signature. You don't understand why. Then explain it. Melissa was going to lose everything. You could have asked me. You would have said no. I closed my eyes. There it was. The truth. She hadn't asked because she already knew my answer. And she had decided that my no didn't matter. I said, Mom, I want you to understand something. Whatever happens next isn't because I stopped loving my family. She started crying. I continued. It's because you stopped respecting me. Then I ended the call. The confrontation happened 3 weeks later. Not at my parents' house. Not at mine. Elena arranged a meeting in a conference room with everyone who needed to be there. My mother, my father, Melissa, Denise Carter, and me. I arrived first. I placed the documents in front of my chair and waited. When Mom walked in, she looked smaller than I remembered. Dad looked angry. Melissa looked terrified. Denise wouldn't make eye contact with me. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Finally, Dad said, "This has gotten completely out of control." I looked at him. It started with the document I never signed. He slammed his hand against the table. "We were trying to protect your sister." "I understand that." "You don't. I understand exactly what you were trying to do." Mom began crying. "We were desperate." I looked at her. "I would have helped if you'd asked me honestly." "You would have refused." "Yes." She stared at me. That answer seemed to hurt her more than an accusation would have. Melissa finally spoke. "Mom told me Claire agreed." I turned toward her. "I didn't. I know that now." She looked at the table. "I signed what Mom gave me because I thought it was just paperwork." Denise began to speak. "I was told the arrangement had already been approved." Elena placed a copy of the property record in front of her. "Then you should explain why the filing states Claire appeared before a notary when she was 2 states away." Denise started crying. She admitted that she had trusted my mother. She admitted she had accepted the paperwork without verifying everything properly. But she also admitted something else. My mother had repeatedly told her that I was aware of the transfer. Mom didn't deny it. The room became completely silent. Dad finally asked me what I wanted. For years, I had imagined that moment. I thought I would want an apology. I thought I would want my parents to admit they had favored Melissa. I thought I would want them to understand every hurt they had caused. But sitting there, I realized I didn't need any of that. I want the filing withdrawn. I want my property protected. I want written confirmation that nobody in this family will make financial decisions using my name again. Dad nodded slowly. "And Melissa?" I looked at my sister. "I hope you find a way forward." Her eyes filled with tears. "But I won't be the way you get there." That was the hardest sentence I had ever said. And the most honest. The false filing was eventually removed. Denise faced professional consequences for the part she had played. My mother and father had to deal with the financial mess they had created without using my property to solve it. And Melissa had to face something she had avoided for years. Her problems were hers. That didn't mean I stopped caring about her. It meant I stopped confusing caring with rescuing. A few months later, Melissa called me. She had found a small townhouse she could actually afford. She had started working with a financial counselor. She was selling things she didn't need and rebuilding her credit. "I wanted to tell you myself," she said. "I'm glad." There was a pause. Then she said, "I was angry at you." "I know. I thought you were choosing a house over your family." "I wasn't." "I understand that now." I sat quietly. Then she said something I never expected. "You were the only person who finally made me realize Mom couldn't keep fixing everything for me." I didn't know what to say. So I said, "I'm glad you're doing better." After we hung up, I went outside. The maple tree in front of my house had turned gold. For months, I had looked at that tree and thought about what almost happened. Now I looked at it differently. It wasn't a symbol of what my family had tried to take. It was simply my tree, my home, my life. My mother didn't call for a while. Neither did my father. At first, the silence hurt. Then I realized something. I had spent years measuring family closeness by how often they needed me. When the demands stopped, I didn't know what to do with the quiet. So I learned. I started taking Saturday mornings slowly. I joined a local book club. I invited coworkers over for dinner. I finally painted the spare bedroom the color I had wanted for years but kept postponing because Melissa might need the room someday. That was when I understood how much space I had been reserving for other people's emergencies. Not just physical space, emotional space, financial space, mental space. I had been living as though someone else's crisis could arrive at any moment and my job was to be ready. Now I was ready for something else, my own life. And that turned out to be much quieter than revenge. It was also much more satisfying. About a year after the incident, my parents came to my house. They had called first. That mattered. Mom stood on the porch holding a small envelope. We wanted to return something. Inside was an old photograph. It showed me and Melissa as children, sitting on the front steps of our first family home. I barely remembered the day. Mom did. I found it in a box, she said. I looked at the photograph. We weren't very fair to you. I didn't answer immediately. Dad stood beside her. We kept telling ourselves that Melissa needed more. I nodded. She did. Mom looked surprised. Then I said, but needing more doesn't mean I needed less. Her eyes filled with tears. That was probably the closest we ever came to saying the truth out loud. They didn't ask for money. They didn't ask about the house. They didn't ask me to fix anything. They simply stood there. For the first time, my parents were visiting me without bringing someone else's problem. I invited them inside. We had coffee. It wasn't magical. Nobody suddenly became a perfect family. There were still old wounds. There were still things we would probably never completely understand about one another, but there was something new, a boundary. And strangely, the boundary made room for honesty. Later that evening, after they left, I walked through the house alone. The same kitchen, the same maple tree, the same chipped coffee mug. But I felt different. I used to think quiet payback meant making the people who hurt me regret what they had done. I don't think that anymore. The real payback was much simpler. They expected me to surrender my life because I was the daughter who could handle it. I didn't. They expected guilt to make me change my mind. It didn't. They expected me to keep proving that family mattered more than I did. I finally understood that I was part of the family too. My needs mattered. My work mattered. My home mattered. My peace mattered. And I didn't have to destroy anyone to protect those things. I only had to stop handing them away. That night, I turned off the kitchen light and looked through the window at the maple tree. For years, I had thought being strong meant carrying everything quietly. Now I knew better. Sometimes being strong means putting something down. Sometimes it means saying no without explaining yourself 10 different ways. And sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do is build a life so steady that nobody else's approval is required to keep it standing. I locked the door. I went upstairs. And for the first time in a very long time, the house felt completely peacefully mine.